we are getting you the latest development in the Israel versus Iran conflict, an escalation that has now reached Iran's strategic oil and gas infrastructure, marking a dangerous new phase in this war. Israeli warplanes have struck the Shahran Oil Depot in western Tehran, which is a major fuel storage hub. Iran's oil ministry has claimed that the fire is under control, but videos emerging out of the country show flames raging at the site. Now, this is a strategic shift. Israel is now targeting Iran's energy infrastructure, a move that could disrupt supplies and send global markets into further turmoil. Now, what is the significance of the Shahran Oil Depot? Let's explain it for you. The Shahran Oil Depot is one of Tehran's key fuel storage and distribution hubs. It supplies petroleum products to critical civilian and military sectors in and around the capital. The depot sits near major highways and industrial zones, making it a strategic asset for urban fuel logistics. Hitting Shehran is a tactical move to disrupt Iran's domestic energy stability and signal vulnerability even in the country's core urban centers. Now, targeting such a facility, remember, escalates this entire conflict from nuclear and military sites to economic warfare, aimed at undercutting Iran's ability to sustain prolonged operations. Take a look at this report filed by AP correspondent John Gambrell, who explains the situation on ground.
Iran has launched a series of retaliatory missile strikes on Israel in the last 24 hours. This is after Israel has launched just a devastating attack on Iran that has seen much of its senior military leadership killed. Now, these strikes that happened in Israel focus primarily around the area of Tel Aviv. There was destruction in private homes and other areas, and in Israel, they say at least 3 people are dead and dozens of others suffered injuries. Now, in Iran, at least 78 people have been killed in these Israeli strikes so far. That's according to casualty information offered by the Iranians, who also say hundreds of others were wounded. We do know that top leaders in their military, including the head of the Revolutionary Guard and the Army Chief of Staff, among others, are dead. As this is going on, even today, the Israelis have been able to basically own the skies over Iran. They've been striking targets across the country.
Now, Israel's Operation Rising Lion has involved over 200 warplanes, striking more than 150 targets, including nuclear sites, military bases, and energy facilities. Meanwhile, Iran's retaliation has been codenamed as True Promise 3. It has seen over 150 missiles and 100 drone strikes in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa, and other cities. Iran has reported that at least 78 people have been dead, including senior commanders and nuclear scientists, with over 320 people who've been wounded. On the other hand, Israel has reported 7 to 9 civilian casualties and over 200 injured people. Iran has called Israel's strikes a declaration of war and has threatened to expand targets to include American bases in the region. Israel, on the other hand, says its strikes have set back Iran's nuclear program by years. Prime Minister Netanyahu has warned that Israeli warplanes will soon be over Tehran once again. The Israeli Defense Forces claim aerial superiority, striking Iranian military and energy sites at will. All right, on Times Now, I'm joined by Mr. Daniel Karman. He is a former Israeli ambassador to India. Mr. Karman, thanks very much for joining us on Times Now. Can I start by asking you, these latest fresh strikes by Israeli Defense Forces on energy infrastructure of Iran, what is it that Israel wants to achieve with this?
Well, Israel wants to achieve one thing, and this was the first aim of this war, and I think it will we'll keep repeating it. We have found ourselves in a situation in which Iran has gotten to a certain degree of development of its nuclear capability and its weaponry capability, which both form the machinery that could make much bigger damages than we see now. And if you look at the dramatic days that we are going through, and we are all going through very dramatic days, I think the alternative would have been much, much worse. And frankly, Iran poses double ongoing imminent existential threats against Israel, and Israel found no other way than to preempt, and this is how it started. So I was listening very carefully to what you said, to the various reports and various declarations. I would not stop at a certain time limit and say, this is a new phase, this is a new phase. We have to look at all of this as a continued crisis, which started with the preemptive strike, and again, I don't want to think about what would be the alternative if we would not act.
Okay.
Iran had the possibility to build nine bombs, nuclear bombs as weapons, and this is not only unacceptable, this is something that should worry Israel, the region, and the whole world.
Ambassador Karman, a lot of experts also are saying that Israel chose to strike not only because it preempted the kind of strike that might come from the Iranian side, and the fact that Iran is at its weakest perhaps at this moment with the kind of decimation that Israeli forces have been able to do on Hezbollah and the Houthis, and in general the military leadership in Iran, but also the fact that US and Iran were going ahead with their talks in Oman, and that is why perhaps Israel chose this timing to sort of disrupt those talks in Oman. Would you agree with that?
No, not really. What you're implying is that Israel did something against and without coordination or without the knowledge of the US, and without knowing for sure, I can promise you that no Israeli action would have been done without notifying or even coordinating with the US beforehand. That's for sure. But you said that the talks were going ahead. They were not. That's the whole thing. They were not going ahead. What the Americans are saying, and they're reflecting what the international community is saying for decades now. Iran cannot have the capability to enrich. Iran cannot make nuclear weapons. Iran has its own obligations, and they're not complying with their obligations, as the International Atomic Energy Agency has stated. So the talks with the US were not going ahead. That's exactly the point.
So how would you respond, Ambassador, then to what the US President Donald Trump is saying, that the US has nothing to do with it?
I would. The American president knows much better than I do what was or was not the involvement of the US. I think, if I understood well what he said, and he rightly said so, the US was not part of the attack. Full stop. The rest, I think, will be talked about in later stages, but I'm sure, I have no doubts in my mind that the US is part of the effort to intercept the hundreds of missiles, ballistic missiles, UAVs, etc., that have been launched towards our country. And I'd like to pinpoint, if you make the equation of what the Israeli attacks are all about against military facilities, nuclear facilities, military leadership, and nuclear scientists, the Iranians have been targeting and have been hitting with a very painful damage on homes, on schools, on civilian infrastructure. You take the consequences for yourself. This is so clear, the difference between what we have done, what Israel is doing, and what Iran is doing.
No, which is what I was coming to next, Ambassador. The fact that Israel has been striking Iran's nuclear facilities at that. When Iran is responding, we just had a latest visual coming in from a Tel Aviv suburb where a residential home, a residential area has been targeted. And therefore, it's not as if Israel isn't suffering damage or casualties. And that is, of course, a question of concern.
It is a matter of concern, and we're mourning the dead. And the reporter talked about 3 people dead. He talked about it yesterday. Since then, during this night, that all the citizens of Israel spent many hours in the shelters. I'm talking with you now from the safe room, from the shelter, and we went in and out during the last 24 hours. And last night was a very complicated night, where all the country was in shelters, and some in 5 or 6 different sites. Big damage was done in a northern city village in North Israel, an Arab village, and I'm sure you know that 20% of our population are Muslims and Christian Arabs. So in an Arab city of northern Israel, a whole family was wiped out. Terrible tragedy. In Tel Aviv, you saw the visuals. There are still people trapped in the debris of this building that almost collapsed. So yes, there is substantive damage all over the country, and this is something that I'm sure was part of the calculation when Israel went out on the preemptive side. As I said before, the alternative would have been much, much worse. The nuclear capabilities of Iran must be fought by Israel and by the region and by the world. That's no doubts about it.
Okay, Ambassador, I request you to stay with me. I'm also getting a breaking news that is the Israeli President Isaac Herzog's statement, where he said Iran has unleashed a wave of missiles on Israel with one goal, that is to kill children asleep in their beds, grandparents, Holocaust survivors, a beautiful Muslim family in Tamra, Jews and Muslims, Israelis and Palestinians. Evil, pure and deliberate. We mourn brothers and sisters torn from us. Israel is fighting to eliminate a threat. Tehran is fighting to spread one. Hatred, chaos, terror and fanaticism. This is their ideology, and the world must stand with Israel for the sake of humanity. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the Israeli president's latest statement. Ambassador Daniel Karman continues to be with us. Ambassador Karman, you know, the fact that the Israeli president is saying that this is an ideology that we are fighting. You talked about how Iran needs to stop its nuclear proliferation. Can I understand from you then what you think is the solution? Because clearly Iran is not listening to either the IAEA or the United States.
Well, this is for them to answer, and maybe this campaign, this preemptive strike and the war that is the continuation of this will be a good message for the Iranians to understand that we, Israel, are serious. Hopefully, we'll understand that the region is serious. And I don't want to give you the name of countries who are not less worried than Israel about the proliferation of Iranian capabilities, and the world through the various organizations, through what the president of France has said, the British are saying, the Canadians are saying, and of course the US. The concern is a concern because we know what the vision of the Iranians is. And the vision of the Iranians takes you back hundreds of years ago, a vision which is an Islamic way of looking at the world, maybe without borders, and I don't want to go too much into it. We have to bring the Iranians back, and I'm talking about the government, not the people. The people of Iran, many of them understand what we are saying, and maybe even support what we are saying. We have to bring Iran, the Iranian regime, into 2025. And in 2025, the world is different than it was 100 years ago.
Do you think the Iranians who oppose the regime of the supreme leader could perhaps take this as an opportunity to revolt?
I don't want to speculate on this. We talk a lot about it. We hear a lot about it. We'll have time will tell. But at this stage, the interlocutor, so to speak, either in conferences or in debates or in the battlefield, is the regime, crippled regime, but the regime that we face now. And the challenge is huge. The challenge is huge. From the Israeli perspective, I would say there are three main levels of concern. One is to be sure that the Iranian capabilities are not advancing towards the fabrication of atomic weaponry, the other one is the weaponization, and the third one is to stop using proxies that would attack us throughout. I just want to remind you that on the 7th of October 2023, we had 7 different fronts we had to confront.
Yeah.
7 different fronts, most of them initiated by the Iranian regime. This is not something that we have to take too lightly.
And therefore, do you think, Ambassador, this would serve as a deterrent?
Sorry?
Would this serve as a deterrent? Would Operation Rising Lion be a deterrent then for further actions by the Iranian regime?
Let me give you the example of Hezbollah. Hezbollah was one of the strongest proxies of Iran, covering our Lebanese border and part of the Syrian border. They're not active at all nowadays. Doesn't it answer the question? The Houthis, these Yemenite tribe of terrorists used and activated by the Iranians is part of the 7 fronts that we had. Who would have thought that a tribe that is dedicated more than anything else to attack Saudi would attack Israel? I mean, this is inconceivable, and this is inconceivable, and all are manned and financed and encouraged by Iran. So I don't know if deterrence is the word, but fighting those 7 different fronts with much success is part of a much larger battlefield.
Ambassador Karman, in conclusion, can I then understand from you how you see this moving forward? Because as we speak, we know that Prime Minister Netanyahu, while he is battling at the front where Iran is there and there is Operation Rising Lion, there's also, of course, the Hamas that needs to be dealt with. Domestically also he's facing pressure. 3 days back his government survived an attempt by the opposition to dissolve the parliament. How do you then see this moving forward?
Well, I'd like to separate between the internal and the external, although I must say that many people do make the connection, and there probably is a connection. But I'd like to concentrate on the threat, which is an existential threat to the state of Israel, which brought Israel to do what it did, the preemptive strike and all what ensued. I think Israel has demonstrated technological excellence in the military side of it and in the prevention of Iran developing. So my estimation, without being an expert on these issues, that there is a setback which is important in the development, which was on the brink of getting to the 12th hour from the Iranian side. What will happen next will probably have to go back at some point to the negotiating table. This is not a matter of yes or no, destroying or continuing. It's much more complicated than that. Time, of course, will tell. The dust, we should let the dust settle. But in the meantime, we have to continue fighting. We have to continue making sure that the Iranians are not developing their nuclear capabilities. We have to make sure that the Iranians stop using their proxies all over across our region and against Israel in various fronts. And we have to safeguard the well-being of our citizens. And if I may, on a personal note, I just want to share with you something that I hope you can see that I found this morning on the street, which is part of an Iranian, I guess, either missile or something that has to do with the barrage of rockets that our region, my neighborhood, the whole state of Israel has suffered in the last 48, 72 hours, and probably will continue to challenge in the next few days.
All right, we hope that stability and peace returns to the region. Ambassador Daniel Karman, thanks very much for joining us on Times Now. Be safe. And clearly the world is closely watching the West Asian region, ladies and gentlemen, as these developments fast take place and change the dynamics of the West Asian region. Thanks very much, Ambassador, for joining us on Times Now.